Hello, Stephen. Is
Hello,
it your
gentlemen.
birthday?
It isn't my birthday. No, my birthday is tomorrow.
Oh, right. Okay.
It
Are
being
you going
Good
to
Friday.
celebrate this great occasion?
Oh, I think there'll be a meal. If as it's Good Friday, if we were in normal times, there'd be a big family event. Not related to my birthday. It's just something we would normally do on Good Friday, which would be by the banks of the Thames, which is 100 miles away from where I live. But obviously we're not doing that,
Right.
Because, so it'll be a relatively normal day.
Well, you can have a few people. I mean, you can have, what is it, half
You
a
can
dozen
have
people in your
6,
garden.
can't you?
Yeah,
Yes.
That's
two
true,
households.
true. Yeah. Unfortunately, I'm because I live in Tewkesbury in Gloucestershire. I live a long way away from the rest of my family. Who are
Oh, right.
all
I
around
see.
London. So,
Okay.
So what, you were born and brought, you were brought up in London?
yeah, originally in Putney. And
Oh,
then
is that the
second
part of the
post-
Thames that you assemble at? Then? Is
yeah,
it right?
no, it's
Oh,
actually my family have a great affinity with the Thames. So there's a bungalow which is owned by my father's old rowing club, which is right on the banks of the Thames, just by Shepperton Lock.
Oh, right.
It's also where I have my wedding reception.
Right.
So it's a lovely location. I mean, the bungalow itself has seen better times, but in terms of having somewhere to have a meal while the sun's shining.
Oh, lovely.
better.
Fantastic.
Oh, brilliant.
But unfortunately, we're not there, so it'll be a relatively ordinary day in Tewkesbury
Right. Okay.
instead.
Well, it's slowly. So I don't know if you've noticed it round where you are, Mark, but I was just looking out the window and there's things going on in neighbouring gardens.
Well,
Nothing too over the top. It's children on trampolines.
we had
and
a very
so forth.
exciting day a couple of days ago, Steve, when David Hepworth and his wife Alison arrived on the way back from Kew and had a cup of tea in our garden, our first
Oh, my
visit since
goodness.
December. And I was aware, talking to them, that there were other voices, down the gardens, that everyone was doing the same, with a certain amount of excitement, really. And one of these things went on quite late into the night. There was carousing. There were cocktails.
Okay. Well, that's
People were going a bit mental. Really.
is when the alcohol gets involved. That's when you think people.
Yeah.
I mean, we must have all seen those pictures of the polling pictures of the
rubbish.
the parks in Nottingham. Oh,
yeah, Liverpool.
Christ's
Yeah.
sake.
Yeah,
Take it home, for God's sake,
Yeah.
Well, you know that people they've been locked up for so long that they can't waste precious time putting things in bins when they could be necking another lager.
Yes,
presumably.
I know. Well, yeah, we have some lovely parks in Tewkesbury, but I've not seen. In fact, I walked on Tewkesbury Golf Course yesterday, expecting to see it heaving with golfers, and I saw about 3. So,
Oh,
Right.
yeah,
Is it? Of course, it's now open to golf again, isn't it?
yeah, since Monday, I think. So,
Right, yes. Yeah, I went past the local tennis club this morning, and it's a hive of activity. Actually, people making the most of the fact that the weather's really nice. So it's tomorrow.
It is tomorrow.
Okay. Now, traditionally on these little chats, we always ask people if they can remember what kind of record playing machinery was in their house when you were a small child. Because it's our way of finding out where you came from.
Well, in Surrey, as I was at the time, I had a sort of a little succession of increasingly better quality sort of dancette style things.
Oh, right, okay.
But I do also remember that my parents they had. Oh, I've been joined by a cat.
Oh, good.
All right, yeah, we can see it.
That's a first.
You can just see about a little bit.
See the tail, yeah.
She is. It's a female cat.
Hello.
Yes.
You're on TV.
She is always jealous. So whenever she hears me talking on Zoom,
oh right, okay, wants to be in on it.
So my parents had a Ferguson. I think it was a Ferguson sort of music center which had cassette and turntable and things. Right. But of course, if you to plug it into UHF to use the radio, they had to plug it into the television socket. Don't remember if you remember ever having to do that. You probably didn't actually.
No,
but we had to. So if I wanted to record something off the radio, like the Friday Rock Show, for instance,
right, okay.
like as I did, they had to go without television for several hours.
Well, you listened to, who would that have been? Tommy Vance? Was that the Friday
Tommy
Rock
Vance? In fact, the first
TV
one,
on radio, the larynx on legs.
That's the fella. And
what would he have been playing? Dave and I actually started our radio careers virtually on Tommy's show, didn't we, Dave?
TV on radio.
Yeah, on Radio 1. What would he have been playing?
The one that springs to mind. So that would have been at the start of 1979. So the one that springs to mind I think it was the first episode of the Friday Rock Show.
Yeah.
Was an entire Yes concert.
Oh, wow.
That's very TV.
Which would have been the 1970. And it was also my first ever gig, the first gig I ever went to.
Oh, wonderful.
At the age of 16. And I've actually got the program.
Oh, wow. Where did this take place?
That was Wembley Arena.
Oh, right.
All right, you've got to give us the lineup in was it 79, did you say?
It was 1979. It was at the Empire. It was still called the
Empire Pool. Yeah.
And it was still called the Empire Pool in 1979. That's amazing.
So the lineup was John Anderson, Chris Squire, Rick Wakeman, Steve Howe, and Alan White.
Oh, the classic lineup. Pretty much.
So by then, sorry, correct me here. Surely Rick Wakeman had left and come back. Is that right?
Yes, he had. Yes, he had. Yeah, he left.
Patrick Moraz was in there in the middle of the 70s, wasn't he? Have I got this right?
Yes, you're absolutely right.
Yeah, Rick Wakeman had done Henry VIII and things.
Yeah, because he'd gone off in a hugely successful career on his own. Henry VIII and King Arthur and all that kind of stuff.
He returned in 76 as a sort of session man for going for the one album. Then was told that he was now in the band again. I think.
Did they come in for full shares again?
Eventually, yeah. And so by that time, he'd now been back for an album called. So I still got a cat here.
Yeah.
So by that time, he there was an album called Tormato, which was my
Tormato.
I remember it.
Which is why this is called Yes. Tormato.
Oh my God!
Hilarious
stuff. So, right, remind me. Okay, I'm gonna test you now.
Okay.
Yes, all made solo albums, and they pretty much all put them out the same week, not far off. Because it was basically, here's the deal: you can take a year off. You're not going to get a separate advance to put out a solo album, and one of them might do well. Well, I don't think any of them did particularly well, but anyway. What are they all called?
Okay. I can answer this.
I want you to. I knew you would be able to. Go on.
John Anderson's was Elias of Sunhillow.
Absolutely correct.
Chris Squire's was Fish Out of Water.
Fish Out of Water. Yes. That's right.
I can see the cover now.
Was called Beginnings.
Yes.
And Alan White's was called Ramshackled.
God.
And Patrick Moraz, who, because he was in his solo album, charted. It actually charted. It was called The Story of I.
Wow.
Wouldn't you like to know which? Very, very impressive. Would you like to know their comparative sales? I'd love to see those in order.
Surely it's got to be John Anderson must have come first.
Yeah. I now, having not prepared this, obviously, I can't remember specifically, but I think almost certainly that the Anderson, Squire and Howe albums did the best. They were all around about the 20s, something around in chart placings.
All right, okay, and then straight out again the following week.
Yeah, they did. But they didn't hang around for that long. Of course, they have different I'm involved in the Yes community for my.
Oh, really?
In what capacity?
You're an official representative.
Only as a fan, but I'm in awe of partially in awe. I'm not a collector, I have to say.
Right.
So I have all those albums. I haven't got them with me because I didn't prepare that. But I'm not really a collector. I'm more an accumulator. So I don't really, I don't really do that sort of thing. But I know a lot of people who do, and I'm completely in awe of their money.
They probably haven't got that anymore.
It's presumably a bottomless pit, isn't it? I mean, once you started, if you were a completist, I mean, isn't that you for life? Kind of.
Yeah, it is. I've got a friend called David Watkinson, who he just spends he's a complete Yes obsessive. Nicest guy in the world. He's a complete Yes obsessive. I'm a big fan, and they're my favourite band, but I'm not a total.
So Alan White, let's just take a short digression.
Yeah,
Alan White, because you're going to fill in the blanks here, because I kind of know a little bit about Alan White, but not a lot. came from Liverpool. Is that right?
No, a village near Newcastle.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Okay, maybe I got this wrong. I had this vague feeling that he had a kind of background in Hamburg and groups. Didn't he play in White Trash, who was signed to Apple?
Oh.
Well, he might have done because he was the drummer on Instant Karma, wasn't he?
Well, this is what I'm thinking.
Yeah, so maybe that was his way
in. He kind
of
came in. There was Jackie Lomax or all that. He was one of those guys.
He was certainly in the Plastic Ono band.
Band, and then years later he popped up in Oasis or something.
No, that's a different Alan White.
Is it? It's another Alan White. It's the younger version.
This is useful. I didn't know this. Okay, you've saved me from embarrassment.
Alan White has, apart from a few solo projects and a few diversions, he's been in Yes since 1970.
Really?
Yeah.
So,
that's his thing.
Nice work.
So as far as I'm concerned, he's a Johnny come lately. He's been there since 1972.
And he still is.
That's classic. That's like we're always talking about the guy who replaced Bill Wyman of the Stones and has now been there longer than Bill
Wyman was. And no one can remember his name.
I still think of Bill Bruford as the drummer for Yes. To me, he always will be.
Yeah. Well, Bill Bruford did 5 albums, and that's
well, they do. They work quickly in those days.
He did 5 albums, and Alan White's done all the rest.
Do you know the thing I remember? Because I'm never a big progressive rock fan particularly, but I loved Yes, and I saw Yes a few times early on because I'm so old.
Yeah.
And the thing about Yes that I think cannot be stressed too highly is in their early days they were always on the radio doing sessions. Why? Because they were really good. They were a group who, because as far as I can know, you'll know more history than I do. Didn't they spend about a year rehearsing in a club before they went out there? I mean, they were so polished as soon as they started playing live. They were better than anybody else on the circuit. And they were doing like Something's Coming from West Side Story and things like this. And so
they did, but they were of course they were already incredibly well seasoned.
I know, but together they really worked at it. And so they do all the sessions on Radio 1 or 2, and they were clearly a group that they could get in for a 3-hour session at Maida Vale, and they get 4 usable tunes out of them. Because they were that good.
But the whole thing stems from the fact that they had already all been around for years doing, apart from Bill Bruford, who was 18 or something when he joined.
Yes,
but was ridiculously talented.
But that was half the appeal, wasn't it? Was the technical complexity of what they played. I can remember going to see them the first time they just put out Roundabout. And Fragile, rather, was Roundabout the first track. It was and marveling at that because it was up there with with 21st Century Schizoid Man as the kind of thing that you cannot imagine anyone competent to be able to play live. It was so difficult.
Yeah.
And that was part of the attraction, wasn't it? And you get back and your mates would say, "Well, why do you like Yes?" You'd say, "Well, actually, they're just amazingly good musicians." And they can play 7-8 times.
The other thing apart from the complexity, though, they were pretty much the only group of that era who, when they came on and they played, it was kind of like listening to the Count Basie band or something like that. You know, it was that confident.
Yeah.
It was that full of pizzazz and life. You know what I mean? It wasn't just noodling. It was they're going to start there and then they're going to go higher.
There was no warm up. You're absolutely right. It just came on and they were absolutely on, and it was a performance from start to finish.
I think that's probably John Anderson who kind of forced them to rehearse constantly.
Yeah.
Much to the irritation of the rest of the band, I'm sure.
Yeah.
You will rehearse and you will get this absolutely right. But John Anderson is an interesting figure because he was already in his late 20s. Was he
really that old? Wow.
Well, he'd been in the
Warriors,
and who'd done the Germany thing.
Yeah.
And he played soul and he played psychedelic music, and he'd already had a little solo career as called Hans Christian.
Oh,
that's good. That's good.
And put out a couple of singles. And he'd been around for a long time. And he got together with Chris Squire because they were, he was collecting, he was at a loose end. This is John Anderson, and he was collecting glasses at the Lachaise Club.
Yeah.
In near the Marquee.
And that's where they end up rehearsing, isn't it?
Yes.
Because their original manager was the person who ran it, or something
that's
like
right.
that.
That's right. Roy Flynn was his name.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. They ditched him after a while, poor old Roy. But anyway.
Am I right in thinking that when John Anderson left, or maybe was booted out, I'm not sure, he was replaced by the person who played John Anderson in a tribute band?
Yes.
Is that right? It is, isn't it?
Yes, it's an unhappy story really, because John was that Yes were touring, were due to be, this is in 2007, I think.
Yeah.
Yes, were due to be touring, having been off the road for a few years. They were due to come back, and John had a very serious
he was ill,
asthma attack.
Yeah.
And essentially, what happened was that he wasn't fit to tour.
Yeah.
And the band kind of decided to replace him. They just stopped waiting for him. So all of a sudden, he was kind of out.
That's what happens when bands get rid of people. They never face up to it.
No.
It's
Nobody ever tells anybody. They find out by reading about it in the paper.
Sid Barrett left Pink Floyd on the boat because one day on the way to a gig, don't bother.
They just didn't pick him up, did they?
No.
They were stopped at his house. They looked up at the house. They thought, no. Apparently, nobody said anything, and they just drove on. And that was it.
That's bad for you. But I mean, so obviously, we won't linger any longer on Yes, because we could do because they're a great story. So what's the constitution? What is Yes nowadays? Chris Squire is obviously no longer with us.
No, John Anderson has been. Oh, there's without going into too much detail. There has been a version of Yes with John Anderson. There were two Yeses for a little while.
Oh,
there was a Yes that developed out of a band called Anderson, Rabin, Wakeman.
Oh, right,
catchy. Rolls off the tongue.
They called themselves Yes. I think the manager required them, Brian Lane required them to call themselves Yes, but they didn't really want to. Anyway, they don't exist anymore. So the current version of Yes, they've been waiting to tour for 2 years now. Because now it's kind of Steve Howe, who in his early 70s is still quite spry.
Yeah.
We had his daughter-in-law on the podcast not long ago.
Yes.
Very exciting.
Alan White is still around, but he's had some health problems, so he's more a talisman than anything really. They have another drummer to play the complicated bits,
right?
And then a bunch of they're all very good. There's a guy called John Davidson who sings, sounds quite like John Anderson. There is a guy called Billy Sherwood who's actually been in the Yes camp for a long time, who was handpicked to be the new Chris Squire. Who again, it does that very well.
Yeah.
The new drummer's a guy called Jay Shellen, and they've got Jeff Downs on keyboard.
Oh God,
Jeff Downs.
From the Buggles with Trevor Horn. Yes.
Who of course joined Yes in about early 80s?
About 84, wasn't he? Yes, in 84, I think.
Yes, it was in 1980 actually.
Oh right, okay.
For the drama tour where they Rick Wakeman and John Allen was suddenly replaced for one album by Jeff Downs and Trevor Horn.
Trevor Horn at these humongous Fairlight.
You couldn't make it up.
Actually, imagine being Trevor Horn, being he's done the Buggles album, but he doesn't really sing that much. He's a bass player, really.
Yeah.
And he has to go on tour with Yes, and one of his first gigs is 3 nights at Madison Square Garden.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Trying to be John Anderson. I don't think he's ever recovered.
No.
So was he the lead singer then?
He was the lead singer. Yeah. Jeff Downs was the keyboard player.
Oh, right. Good grief. What a fascinating tale.
That is the deep end, isn't it? So have you transferred this degree of affection to any other groups, or are they the overriding?
No. Yes, I have. Yes, I love lots of other bands. I'm best known for, I suppose, my love of progressive rock, but it's right. But my gateway thing was not Yes. I was a Rick Wakeman fan before I like Yes. So the first album my gateway album into all this is the least trendy album of all time, which is that.
Oh, right, King Arthur and the Knights of the Road Type.
Yes.
Which we won't dwell on too much, apart from, though I still love it, of course.
Yeah.
So was that the second one? So Six Wives was his first one.
Journey to Center of the Earth was the second one. That was the third.
Oh, so that's the third one. So what's the one that he did?
Which was one performed on ice. There was one performed on ice.
That's just what I was going to say. Surely
it was this. Yeah, it was this album.
Well, I thought so. Yeah.
Which is hilarious. I mean, it's as with the Yes album Tormato, again, which I still love, because they were my gateway albums. I still love them, but I now realize that they aren't those particular artists' finest products.
No, that's fine.
But I played Tormato every day for months in preparation for seeing them at Wembley as a 16-year-old. So, but I've loved. I like progressive rock. I'm as an aside, I'm kind of known in the progressive rock world because I actually run a progressive rock festival.
Oh, really? Fantastic. What's it called?
It is called the Summer's End Festival.
Good for you. That's brilliant.
It's been going since 2005, and I've been a kind of myself and another guy called Hugh. We run it together. So it's now based in Chepstow in South Wales in a something called the Drill Hall, which you can squeeze 300 people into on a good day. But it's been other places. But it's been a labour of love. So
what kind of people have you had? So this is not a big outdoor festival. It's sensibly inside the Drill Hall.
It's inside the Drill Hall. So we can.
Who's been your major if wet? Yes, Dr. Scout Hut if wet. Yeah.
I think this is.
Oh, hold on! I want to say that.
That's good.
This is the T-shirt from 2009. There's always a T-shirt.
Right.
Yeah.
And it just happened. I grabbed this at random, but it just happens that year.
Oh, right.
Our headliner on Friday night was Steve Hackett.
Steve Hackett.
Oh, well, Palace. I've heard of them. Pendragon.
That was in a larger venue, and it was rammed in there.
Oh, yeah. Pendragon. I know of Pendragon.
Pendragon, you all know of. You might not know of Palace as well.
No, you've lost me now. If we get under God sticks, I'm lost.
No. Beyond that, it gets into the. It was interesting. You were talking the other day in the podcast about the fact that there are no bands anymore.
Yeah.
Of course, there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of bands, but they're all below the radar.
Yeah.
And there's a thriving progressive rock community out there.
I'm sure.
Made up of bands who, some of whom can play all over the world, can play festivals all over the world.
I can well imagine.
But have no traction in the public consciousness whatsoever.
No. So what's the average age of the bands? I mean, obviously Steve Hackett's I know Steve Hackett's age, but Pendragon and people like that. Are these guys in their 50s and 60s?
They are. But as you get further down the bill, the bands get younger.
Right. Okay.
In fact, if I've got it to have, I have. In fact, one of the bands we've missed. We do 2 festivals a year, one called Winter's End and one called Summer's End.
Right.
And we've missed 3, obviously, because of conditions. We've missed 2 Winter's Ends and a Summer's End. But if Summer's End goes ahead in October, there's a band. I wasn't going to show this. There's this band, a band called Mia.
Yeah.
This is one of the best albums I've heard for many, many years. It's a sort of pop prog, I suppose. And they're from Norway. This is an international festival, by the way.
Quite a lot of prog bands are.
We have bands from all over the world playing, and I think about 10% of the people coming to it are from Norway now.
Yeah.
The actual punters.
Yeah.
But they're just a band that formed in a little town in sort of Norway, about 50 miles north of Oslo, you know.
And
they're absolutely brilliant.
That's how they occupy the exactly
those long
absolutely
winters.
Nightfall arrives in about October and then is over in March.
Lots of time to rehearse,
and you can just about play one or two tracks by Mia. That's right, yeah.
But the standard of the material is sensationally good, and the standard musicianship is very high as well.
Yeah,
but of course, they are loved by probably a few hundred people around the world at best. You know.
Yeah. So you presumably got a mailing list and so forth, and you must have a very similar audience coming every year, do you? I mean, it's kind of people who put it in their calendar.
We do, yeah. It's there's a good 150 people. It's always the same people. It's a social event as well as being it's a way for like-minded people to meet.
Yeah.
It's like the word podcast. Don't worry. We love it.
It's very good. Well, I hope. When are you hoping to have it back on? Possibly at the end of this summer.
If we're allowed to cram that number of people into a hall, it'll be late September, early October.
Well, by then you'll have COVID passports and so forth, which I've just been reading about in the States, that they're Live Nation, obviously the world's biggest promoter, and they're talking about introducing a COVID passport to get into gigs, but
was the essence?
There is an exemption. They were talking about an exemption for country music. So basically, I thought that was hilarious. Yeah. You know, the idea that in Trump country, nobody believes in vaccination at all.
Nobody would care. That's right.
Because they'll probably shoot each other anyway, you know. So.
Well, we are fortunate, I guess, in that the audience is over 50.
Yes, they've all been done.
We've all been done.
We've watched we've been keeping track of this the last few weeks. We've been keeping track of all the people who used to be on the cover of Smash Hits when Mark and I were running it, slowly getting vaccinated. Altered images have just been done.
The thing is that when you're vaccinated, you cannot resist tweeting a photograph of yourself.
Absolutely.
You're getting the injection, because it's big news, you know. Yeah. And we've been watching. It's been so funny. And we go, well, it's been, we've got down to Duran must be getting theirs by now.
Surely.
It won't be long before its curiosity.
The cure must be done.
The cure must be done a long time ago. That's right.
So we talked to
police will be onto their second.
We talked to Gary Kemp this morning. And how old's Gary Kemp? 61?
He's 61. He's born in 59. Yeah.
Wow. Which seems remarkable to me that Gary Kemp is 61, but I suppose it's just completely logical.
Yeah.
So, what else have you got? Any other souvenirs to show us? You got stuff there? Go on.
I've one. Moving back a little bit in time. That this may be familiar actually, because it has been mentioned on the podcast previously.
Okay.
But probably my most precious piece of vinyl, though I had to rebuy it when all my singles got destroyed in a house move, is this. Now, it will be very difficult to read.
Apple pie custard.
Now,
primrose something. Go on.
In 1976, I would have been 14, I think, and my brother and sister were 11. My mother answered a classified ad in the back of the Evening Standard to be involved in a recording session. And as it turned out, it was at Abbey Road. So we all trogged off to Abbey Road in whatever it was in 1976. And it was for a new band called Apple Pie and Custard that was the brainchild of Herbie Flowers, who is the bass player Herbie Flowers, who at that time would have been in T-Rex, I presume.
Was he in T-Rex?
He was in the last lineup of T-Rex.
Okay, he might well have been.
So, well-known session bass player, really. And it
absolutely. Walk on the Wild Side, all that.
The band also included Joe Brown.
Oh, yeah.
And we think it was produced by B.A. Robertson, because I can't find another Brian Robertson.
I remember this. Somebody wrote into Word.
It was me.
It was you. That's right. Because every single word of this is completely familiar.
due to an administrative error, it was misattributed to somebody else.
Oh no!
Oh,
I'm so sorry about
No,
that.
so it's fine. It's fine. But
Was it printed in the magazine or was it on the website?
It was no. It was. I didn't write into it. It was. I just wrote into the podcast.
Right.
So you mentioned it briefly on the podcast.
Okay.
Okay.
About 6 months ago, something like that. Perhaps longer. I think. So I just done a little note about it, just like I thought it might amuse, basically. So the idea was that it wasn't a competition or anything. The idea was that we just, my mother, who did stuff like that, just thought it might be good fun to do it.
Yeah.
So we went into this recording session and we whacked 3 tracks, one of which was the A side, which is a song called Primrose Stores, which is, to be honest, doesn't have an awful lot of musical merit.
Right.
It was a kind of a cod musical sort of thing. It was a tribute to the great days of the corner store, with some kind of it was going for the novelty song market. I really think, and we sang as a big. So there were about 50 of us there, I guess.
Can you remember the lyric you had to sing?
I can't. It was like I've played it recently. It was actually it was small shops gone but not forgotten. Long live Primrose Stores.
Oh right.
Lead vocal shared amongst the band. So Herbie sang a little bit. Joe Brown sang a little bit. Vicky Brown sang a little bit. And the B side, on which we just did crowd noises, I remember, is called Traveling DJ.
Okay.
And it's kind of a Elvis kind of number with Joe Brown doing an Elvis impersonation. I think it was Joe Brown anyway, doing an Elvis impersonation. Again, it's very much, it's very much novelty market stuff. And there was one more track that obviously none of us have heard since we recorded it, because the album, there's going to be an album. It was never released. It's going to be called Daniel Danzak and the Flying Scotsman. None more 1976, really, I don't think.
Really? Absolutely.
But I don't, as far as I'm aware, it was never released. We did hear the single once on Terry Wogan.
But I mean, tell us, B.A. Robertson, Joe Brown, and Herbie Flowers, and a song about corner shops. You couldn't make it up, could you?
No, and it's not on anybody's CVs, obviously.
Yeah.
Why would it be? It must have bombed appallingly.
Yeah.
But it was great fun to do, when we were at Abbey Road. I mean, I was only dimly aware it was Abbey Road.
Were you in the big studio? Were you in studio too? You're in the
big studio too. Yeah. I think the idea was they were going to attempt to break the record for the number of people in a chorus or something like that. But I think there were only 50 people there, so it was
long way to go there.
Yeah.
My brother and sister, who I speak to every week, they reminded me that apparently, again, this is very mid-70s, there was a woman standing behind us who was kind of wearing a sheer black top with nothing underneath it, which was very distracting, but I don't remember anything about that. I'm kind of almost glad to say. I do remember that Sandy Shaw turned up.
Oh my Lord. Was she wearing shoes?
I just got a vague memory of a waft of black chiffon.
Wow.
I think there was some sort of competition. I think that we might have meant to have been in fancy dress or something, but we weren't, I don't think.
That's a great story.
So it came out, and we were told. Yeah,
tell your grandchildren you're on a record.
Yeah, the band's never broken up, so we're still members.
Yeah, exactly.
They'll come back together again.
Yeah, we were threatened with an appearance on Top of the Pops, but that didn't happen, obviously. So.
You would have been the Winifred School Choir of the Year. Amazing.
I suppose. And what else? We did. Obviously, I'm known for liking progressive rock music, but obviously my taste goes much wider than that. I just get a bit pigeonholed. Everyone assumes that everything I listen to is progressive rock. But I had, in the mid-80s, I had this kind of minor obsession with sort of chunky Australian rock bands.
All right.
Of the Midnight Oil.
Cold Chisel, would they have been in there?
Yeah, they would have been in there. Midnight Oil.
Ice House.
Yeah, I loved Ice House.
Yeah.
The band that I loved the most, and this is one of those situations where it's you go through a period where they're your band, even though nobody else likes them for a while. And then the band went on to become incredibly famous, incredibly powerful, rich and powerful, I'm sure. I loved In Excess.
Right.
But I liked In Excess before anybody else liked In Excess, unless you're Australian. So they were on in I couldn't find my copy of the Listen Like Thieves album, which is
Like Thieves,
but I've got the single, one of the singles from that period, which is, there you go, there's Michael Hutchence in all his
pomp
and glory. So in the summer of '86, they were trying to break Britain and break Europe. So they spent all summer in Europe, and I went to see them loads of times. But they were on the Whistle Test in summer of '86 as well.
I don't remember that at all.
You introduced them, Mark.
You're kidding me.
Did you interview them,
No.
Mark?
I just simply have no recollection of that whatsoever. That's
Why
amazing.
would you?
What did he say? What did he say?
I can't
suppose it's on YouTube. Oh
no! I think I had it on video. I must have.
It'll be on YouTube. It'll be there.
I'm going to have to look that up later. That's amazing. How funny. So, were you still very fond of the band when he took up with Paula Yates?
Well, that's one of those things. So myself and my friend Mark, we loved them for that summer, and I
wondered what your position on that was.
Went to them a few times, and then the following year they had the album Kick, and then all of a sudden the hit singles started happening.
And you didn't like them anymore, did you?
Well, I liked them, but
you went to see them. He said, "Who are all these people?"
They weren't
Who
my
are
band.
you?
All of a sudden, I was having to go and see them at Wembley Arena.
Oh, there you go. That happens.
Rather than at the Town and Country Club.
And it's terrible, isn't it? Yeah, they're not your special love anymore, are they?
No.
They're trollops like everybody else.
These Johnny-come-latelys, I know. You can't help it. It's just completely natural. We're all guilty of it.
I know, but... Sorry.
In Excess are one of those groups. I don't think I own a single In Excess record.
I don't really know what they sound like.
Because I kind of knew. I suppose I always thought, they'll always be around.
Yeah.
It never struck you that they go away. Obviously, they did.
There's definitely an Australian sound. It's very 4/4. It's very chunky. The guitar's always very chunky, but
it's very not black. There's usually the distinguishing factor of Australian music. It tends to have no black influence in it at all.
Yes, there's. I think In Excess. Of course, In Excess it started out as a post-punk band, really.
Right,
Their early material is very jump up and down. It's very punky, very post-punk. But they sort of morphed gradually into a stadium rock band, essentially.
Yeah, absolutely.
Starring three people called Farris. Weren't the three Farris brothers?
Yeah, there were several Farrises.
Yeah.
One of whom was incredibly young, and so still looks quite young now, I think. So I'm not sure whether they still technically exist.
I'm going to say, do they exist?
They've existed relatively recently. Obviously, they were never the same after Michael Hutchence's however he came to die. I
wonder if they did they recruit a Hutchence look and sound alike? Or
they didn't. They didn't go the tribute band route. They recorded the lead singer of who's never forgotten, the lead singer of a band called Noiseworks.
All right.
A second rung Australian sort of rock band. I had an album back in the 80s where you just needed to say that they were Australian. I'd probably go and buy it.
Right. Why such devotion to Australia?
I don't know. I had an Australian girlfriend for a while in the
very loyal
for a while, but it was. I think I just liked the sound. I guess I went through that whole period where after progressive rock kind of ended, it never really ended, but there wasn't a lot of it around, so I was kind of looking for other stuff. And apart from chunky Australian rock, I tended to go down the route of bands like Tears for Fears, sort of art pop bands, Talk and bands and bands like that. After that,
Tears for Fears made, let's be honest, some terrific records. Sowing the Seeds of Love, psychedelic masterpiece.
It is
very underrated, I think.
Yes, the rest of that album. I mean, in fact, that album is. I got it. Excuse me.
It's a kind of Beatles infused. That's great. Yeah.
What's that record called? Sowing the Seeds.
It's called The Seeds of Love.
Seeds of Love.
The rest of the album is, funnily enough, It's one of those albums that there's a lot of artists who almost become progressive rock bands without knowing it.
Yeah.
It happened to some of the Britpop bands. You get 2 or 3 albums in and you think, I'm a bit bored about writing all these 3-minute songs. I'm going to expand. Let's have a guitar solo in there.
Yeah, absolutely. So when they realise they're not going to have any hits anymore, they just go, just let it crack.
And they're also trying to pad out a live set, I think.
Well, there is that. Yeah. Even Pulp did it. All of a sudden, I remember a track from one of their last albums, thinking, that's almost progressive rock. Almost.
Yeah.
So, a lot of bands move down that route just because I think they're just bored of just cranking out songs after a while.
So cranking out songs is very hard to do, I suppose.
Well, it is. Yeah.
It requires discipline. Verse, chorus, bridge, etc.
Yeah.
So maybe we haven't got a last song for the album. Let's make the last track long.
Yeah, just let it go on
going.
A while.
Yeah,
let it go on a while. What's the longest prog track you know?
Oh well, these days, of course, because there's no limitations. There are bands doing 40-minute tracks.
Oh wow!
Yeah, and longer. The CD era just all of a sudden made people start producing 78-minute albums, which is never a good thing.
It's rarely a good thing, isn't it?
I think there are some very long tracks, but I think having the limitation of at least one side of vinyl is helpful.
Absolutely.
Merciful.
Yes.
It's also
we were talking in the podcast the other day about the old gag about the Grateful Dead, who put out a box set once that had 60 CDs, and the big gag was they haven't announced which song it is yet.
Yes,
which
I
is
heard
pretty
that. Very amusing.
So who are you looking forward to seeing when this bloody war is over and you're allowed out?
I guess there may be some gigs around, in the summer. The next thing I'm expecting to go to will be my own festival.
Right.
And in fact,
I'm quite cool.
And in fact, I'm one of the things we have to do. We need to sort of switch into actually. At some point, we'll have to make a decision that it's actually happening.
That's the difficult bit, isn't it? Yeah.
So will that be the summer one? You talk about the summer one or the winter one?
This is
October, isn't it?
This will be the summer one. So it's
the summer one.
It's September, October.
Do people camp as well, or is it all? They all bed.
No, they all fight over the same scant accommodation in Chepstow.
Yeah.
Bless.
Well,
them.
it can't be that scant. You got a racetrack at Chepstow. There must be accommodation for people.
There is, but it's not. There's not as much as kind of we need to cram 250 people in there. So
is it in Wales?
It's just about in Wales.
Okay, is anything like? Oh God, Mark and I been a couple of times to the Lambe Literary Festival, which is South Wales, isn't it? It's a place with an association with Dylan Thomas. So it's a very lovely place, little village, and of course, once a year there's a great incomers of literary people and publishers and whatever. And what do they want to do? They want to show off to each other, tell each other jokes, plug their books, and they want to eat and drink. And you would have thought that the good burgers of Larne would greet this incoming, tide with, oh, lovely, we're going to make a lot of money. Not so. They can't wait to close, can they, Mark?
No, there's a certain resistance to it, actually. They can't bear these insufferable show-offs from that London coming down.
With their money.
I know. I have to say, this festival is on such a gloriously shambolic and I don't think the producer would mind me saying that. Shambolic and low level. He's actually quite proud of it. Low level kind of key. But there was a brilliant moment. I went to see somebody being interviewed by David Quantick about their new fiction book. And in the middle, the promoter arrived and started unscrewing the microphones. And I said, what's going on? He said, the poets need the microphones. And it was just so funny because the poets were playing a slightly big, they were in like the town hall or something.
Because the poets are really quiet.
Yeah, poets can't do any whispering anyway, so they won't be much good with that. So the PA was removed in the middle of this and transported to the stars.
I think you find a lot in common with your Chepstow situation.
Well,
so if it goes ahead, do you know who'll play?
Oh yeah, we've got a lot. To us, I've almost forgotten the lineup because we booked it 2 years ago.
Oh right.
It's just kind of bumped on. I think we've got Palace back again this year. And I've we've got in fact one of the bands that was going to there was a band from Sweden that was going to be one of the headliners on the Sunday night, and they've decided that it's early that they're not going to come, so we're going to have to replace them at some point.
Okay.
But my feeling is we'll scale things down. We may end up scaling things down a little bit just to be safe.
Yeah.
So that there's not too many people upset if it doesn't come off.
Well, but I'm sure there'll be a lot. There's 300 people looking forward to it.
We try and keep the money as close to ourselves as we can. So we have a bar there. So we encourage people to drink on the premises.
I say you run your own bar.
We do run our own bar, which is very important, and we do food as well. But all these things, we don't make a huge pile of cash.
I'm sure you don't. So I'm damn sure you don't, because you don't factor in your own time either. You're not getting paid for.
Absolutely,
that's the thing, isn't it? Yeah. People always think anybody running a gig of any kind, they must be making a fortune. There were 200 people there or whatever. It's never as simple as that. I
mean, you can do these sort of things and make money. In fact, we've got good at breaking even comfortably these days.
Well, that's what you should do. Yeah.
So have you got to the point where you're thinking of moving to larger premises?
People often encourage us to do that, but as soon as you move up, you've got all that complexity of risk to fill it for a start. Yeah. So it means, do we book bigger bands? Do we take more of a chance? We're trying to get Marillion or somebody like that.
Yes, I was going to mention it,
in fact, we've got Pendragon, the aforementioned Pendragon, who still exists, playing Winter's End next year, and a band of their relative scale are actually relatively expensive. So even that's a bit of a chance. But
so it's actually what you're running is no disrespect, not a festival. It's a club. It's a club once a year, isn't it? Or twice a year, or whatever it is. And the thing about clubs, because Mark and I, we have Word in Your Ear, which is takes place at the Islington. And previously I've done speech things that took place at one venue. And what I've come to realize is clubs, they depend on the venue. Once you change the venue, you're not quite the same anymore. No. And if you look in the history of clubs, whether it's Blitz or the Roxy or the Cavern or whatever, you can't port that somewhere else, because it is what it is as a consequence of where it is.
Yes.
And the size and, the night of the week and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, people do travel to it from a long way away.
No, for sure.
But they like to travel to Chepstow.
And they know what it is.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Whereas if you're going to go in a bigger venue, there'll be a load of them and think straight away, well, I don't want a bigger venue.
They'd immediately be saying it's not as good as it used to be. which is the fate, ultimately, of all festivals, isn't it?
We've changed venues twice now, and every time we've done it, it's been a real jolt.
I'm sure it has.
I bet. Yeah. Oh, well.
Well, I'm so impressed. We've never had have we, Dave? We've never had a festival promoter on the show before. That's
the other thing I must mention, lest I'll be crucified by people, is that the other thing that I do, my main day job, is that I run a small publishing company that does books on music.
That does what? Sorry,
books on music.
Oh, really? Books?
Oh, right. What sort of books have you had? What sort of books?
Because most of my career has been my career has mainly been in the publishing industry, but not in the big leagues like you guys have both written for. Obviously, all the best people write for Penguin. Dave, obviously.
I write for anybody who pays me. I'm not snobbish. Go on.
And without being too sycophantic, I really enjoyed Rockstar Stole My Life as well, Mark.
Oh, that's very sweet of you. Thank you very much.
I'm a listener, though. I tend to listen to them on audiobooks. I can't wave them around and prove to you that I've got
that's great.
Yeah.
Most of my work career has been based in formulaic books. So I do. So the books that I do are stick to a formula, which has lots and lots of benefits in terms of production and scope. Sure. So I do a series called the On Track series. There you go. That's level 42.
Oh, right. I've seen those.
Okay. Yeah, I've seen those,
these aren't the sort of books that generally win awards.
No.
So it's just an analysis of the band's recording.
So is that the kind of Ian MacDonald revolution in the head structure applied to format, applied to level 42? Yeah.
And so I've just scaled that out over any band that's been vaguely successful. So it's not a new idea by any means. Obviously, Ian MacDonald.
Oh, go on! You've got to tell us who have been the big sellers.
How many of those have you done?
In total, we're up to 50. I'm up to 50. I've got them all on the shelf over there.
Good Lord.
Up to 53, I think.
Can you tell us some of the big sellers?
Who did you start with?
The first one, thank the goodness they're all in the right order. The first was Queen.
Right. Okay.
Right.
Safe bet.
Deep Purple. I did a few film ones, but they haven't really sold very well. The best sellers so far are, I did a book on Yes, surprise.
Yeah.
Right.
And the book on Genesis has sold really well. Again, that's not a surprise.
Right.
It's not, there's a couple of books on the Beatles. Jethro Tull. We've got just looking.
Boy, it must be hard to write a book about the Beatles track by track and come up with new information.
This was an A to Z guide to all their songs, so it was a bit of an offshoot, really.
Yeah.
Just looking at my whiteboard now, we've got a cross section, Caravan, Tom Petty,
all right,
Elvis Costello and the Attractions.
So they fit that kind of mold of the one you have, like the level 42 one. They're broadly that format, that size. Yeah. Okay.
But you've got to be able to identify, haven't you? A bit like magazine publishing, actually, and the kind of people you put on the cover of magazines. You've got to identify people with very deep followings. They don't have to have an enormously wide following, but they have to have a very deep following. Don't they?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Because you could do a book about the Fall, for example. It'd probably sell really well.
I haven't
probably done one.
We've done because again it's mainly classic rock, I suppose. But we've done the Clash. There's a book on the Damned coming out later on in the year. So the Fall would be excellent because
the people who tend to be completists, don't they? The people who like the Fall, they don't like them at all. Well, they've got like 72 albums.
At want of, so for instance, we did Elton John, and that one's not sold particularly well because I suppose.
I can understand why not, because people only care about certain Elton John songs. They like the concept of Elton John, but they're not interested in everything he does,
Yeah, and it's without to use a dodgy word, it's about penetration, really. It's about getting to those fans.
So how do you sell them now? Online or?
Through the same circles that your books will be. They are, it's proper commercial publishing, but just on a slightly smaller scale. So they're obviously we carried on publishing. We didn't publish for 3 months last year, just because of COVID. But then we restarted and we haven't stopped. So it's Amazon is a huge amount.
So you've presumably you've produced whole books during lockdown where none of you've been together in the same room and all that kind of stuff.
Well, no, it's mainly me, to be honest.
All right.
It's my company, so I have a guy who does all the design work. I have a couple of freelance editors. And I employ salespeople in the same way that Penguin and do. It's just on a slightly smaller scale, but it's all through the same channels. I have my own shop, which is through. I don't do myself. It's through a website called Burning Shed. You might have heard of it. It's sort of kind of progressive rock, but it's kind of linked to bands like Porcupine Tree and stuff like that. So they. The guy that runs Burning Shed also played my festival and convinced me to do my shop through then, and that works really well because that means I don't have to get involved in parceling up books and sending.
So at your festival, you've got a little stall at the back of the hall, haven't you, selling your books? You have.
Pendragon, every track,
I would do the same.
I'm not. I mean, fun enough, people keep offering me all these relatively obscure progressive rock bands, and I keep turning them down because I don't. They may be big in that person's world, but who else is going to buy it? Really?
No.
So I tend to. That my only requirement. I sell a lot of books in the United States as well. So my only requirement really is the band should be reasonably well known. Chart success, well known.
Yeah.
and that they should have a reasonable following in the USA. Really.
So, what's the name of the publishing company? Sorry,
it's called Sonic Bond Publishing.
Sonic
Bond.
Sonic Bond. SONICBOND.
Oh, right. Okay.
Very good. That's really impressive.
Very good.
It's a little cottage industry, but it's, we're doing pretty well.
Well,
Yeah.
God bless
Sounds
you.
like you are. Good for you.
You're doing the right thing. So it's traditional on these calls that we finish by asking people to tell us what is the greatest record ever made. And I feel that you above all will have an answer.
Supremely qualified to tell us.
Yes.
And it's going to be by somebody we've never heard of.
No, it won't be. It'll be by somebody we've already been discussing at length.
All right.
All right. So it's
for me, the greatest album ever made is Close to the
Edge.
Oh, yes. That's fair enough.
That's 2 albums after your favorite album, the Yes album, David.
Right, yes.
Yeah.
That's my favorite. Yeah.
But it does include Bill Bruford, but it also includes Rick Wakeman. It also has a sidelong track in the title track, Close to the Edge.
It does. Yeah. I always preferred Yes when they sounded like individual tracks.
Yes.
But Close to the Edge, it's one long piece, isn't it? Or
it's one long piece. The thing I'll say in its favour is that it's a distillation of Yes doing the progressive rock thing. So it's 18 minutes and 12 seconds long, and there's not one bit of flab on it. So there's whereas you might argue that later on progressive rock's banned beyond its
earlier Yes albums in the Hepworth household, as you'll know if you've read the news books, were enlivened by Dave turning off the light switch in order to create a kind of
it's after I went to see them at the LSE in 1971, and they played Yours in No Disgrace, and they had what seemed to me at the time to be a fantastic light show. I'm sure it was just dead cheap, but when it went dun 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 dun, the lights went on and off, and we went back to our flat in Turnpike Lane afterwards and played the record while one of us went and stood by the light switch, turning on and off the 30.
I love it.
I remember the story.
I love it. I know.
It's true.
We made our own entertainment back then, etc. It's a wonderful
light show.
Absolutely.
Well, look, it's been lovely talking to you, Stephen.
And you.
And many happy returns as of tomorrow.
Thank you very much.
And
I'd like to think that a copy of Tormato or whatever is going to be dusted down and given a kind of ceremonial playing.
I think I should actually. My vinyl copy, which I've still got, is completely knackered through being played with a very bad stylus.
Treat yourself to a new one.
Yeah,
I'll dig out the CD in its honour.
Okay. Well, have a lovely
great
day.
fun.
Thank you very much.
Happy birthday.